One of my favorite concepts of the new book, Big Potential, is the idea of the virtuous cycle. And it's something we get a lot of questions about. So I want to go a little deeper into it. In the Happiness Advantage, I had originally started with this idea that we have the formula for happiness backwards, that we think we'll work harder, we'll be more successful, and then we'll be happier. And that happiness doesn't work in that directional line, that success doesn't equate to higher levels of happiness. But if you flip it around, happiness does lead to higher levels of success. What we got fascinated by was a lot of people treat happiness as a zero-sum game, that if one person wins, other people are actually becoming less happy. Or if one person becomes successful, other people are becoming less successful. That's the idea behind small potential, right? That only one person could be succeeding while the rest of us are not doing very well. But as we looked at the data, what we saw was a completely different picture emerge. One in which the success of others were actually changed by the successes and the happiness levels that we had ourselves. In other words, that happiness wasn't just an individual choice, it was an interconnected one. So let me tell you one of my favorite research studies in Big Potential. So I started the book with the story about a biologist in 1935 who was going down a river in southeast Indonesia. And he was supposed to get back to his camp before night fell because that's when all the predators came out. And he didn't make it back in time. And as he was looking out of the boat, nervous about which predator was going to jump out of a tree, which snake was going to attack him, he looked up at one of the mangroves lining the river and he saw that one of the trees suddenly got struck by lightning. And then it went dark. And then all of a sudden, as lightning never does, it got struck by lightning again. And then in this reality bending moment, every single tree along the river for 100 yards got struck by lightning and went dark all at the same time. When his faculties recovered, he realized that they weren't getting struck by lightning. Those trees were covered with billions of bioluminescent lightning bugs that for some reason were lighting up and going dark at exactly the same time. Now in Dallas, Texas, where I live, when the lightning bugs are going off and your kids are chasing them, they go off individually at random moments, not in synchrony with one another. So the biologist was amazed at this discovery, went back to the United States, wrote up this scientific article about the miracle in the mangroves, the case of the synchronous lightning bugs of Southeast Indonesia. And no one believed him, because biologists said the whole point of being a lightning bug is to light up in the dark, right? To differentiate yourself from the darkness so that you can increase your chances of reproduction. So why in the world would you light up with other people? It just makes it harder to distinguish you. And mathematicians said it's impossible for order to come out of chaos, right? In order for that to happen, a leader has to emerge. And who is the lightning bug going, now, now, now? No one was doing that. So scientifically, mathematically, biologically, it was impossible. 8 decades later, two researchers at MIT found out that if lightning bugs light up separately, like they've evolved to do in most places in the world, their success rate of reproduction per night is 3%, which is still pretty good. But it turns out that in two places in the world, the bugs have actually figured out how to light up to the millisecond, time to the millisecond, with the rest of their community. So you actually get an entire pulse of light instead of individuals lighting up. And it turns out the success rate goes from 3% to 82%. Per bug. That's incredible, right? Because it wasn't like one bug was just doing really well. It turns out the entire system was doing so much better than we even thought was possible. That to me is the cornerstone of small potential and big potential. Small potential is what you can achieve alone. Big potential is what happens when you connect to the ecosystem of potential around you. But this comes right back to the virtuous cycle. We all know about vicious cycles. A vicious cycle is where a student doesn't really like school, so they don't study very hard, so they do worse on an exam, and they get bad grades, and so they hate school even more. And this downward cycle starts to occur where their self-confidence goes lower and lower, and they don't even try anymore. A virtuous cycle is the exact opposite pattern, and harder sometimes to start, but once you get it to start, the power of that collective momentum is amazing, just as we saw with those lightning bugs. Because it turns out, when those lightning bugs were lighting up together, the power of their light had actually increased, which meant more and more bugs all across the forest could start to see that light. And as more and more of the lightning bugs came to that location, both female and male lightning bugs, it turns out that they came with their light. So the light got brighter and brighter and stronger, and by the end of the night, you can actually see those mangrove trees from 5 miles away, which is amazing. and exactly what I think we really want to see happen in our companies and schools. I've been looking at schools and companies that have been really focusing on creating a positive change within their culture, specifically focusing around the idea of the orange frog parable. This idea that happiness is not just advantageous, it's actually contagious as well. Because what we're finding is that when schools or companies actually choose to become positive, they attract more positive people to want to work there or to go there. And when that occurs, more and more people see the enjoyment that they're having, and it starts to increase from there. And what you get is not one or two people lighting up in the darkness. You actually get an entire system that's succeeding at higher levels because of what they're doing there. So let me give you a couple examples of this that I think are clear ones and that we've seen in reality. So one of the ones I love is that, like, if a student, for example, is nervous about trying out a new skill set, maybe it's picking up debate in school, and isn't sure that he or she is going to be able to accomplish this, but the teacher gets them to take that first step. And once the teacher is able to get that student to get that first step, he or she praises that student, and that student, feeling good about it, starts to invest a little bit more. As they invest a little bit more, they start to enjoy debate a little bit more, but they also get better at it. And as they get better at it, they enjoy it more, and their skill level rises, but their pleasure rises as well, as they see what their behavior is and what they're capable of, right? But while this is occurring, this other students that are around them are starting to see how much fun they're having doing debate. And we're attracted to things where people seem to be having fun, where people are positive. The research is extraordinarily clear that one of the most powerful things you can do to get other people to want to do what you're doing is to have fun doing it and to be positive in the midst of that. We're evolutionarily designed to move towards that because we know when we're positive, our bodies actually work at their highest possible level. Not only does our brain work better, but our well-being rises because our stress levels and cortisol levels start to decrease as well. So as more and more people want to do debate now, you're starting to get more and more people who are doing this together, and you get mentors that are formed. And now that teacher who thought he or she was having to do this all along to push these students that didn't want to do it in the first place, now get a student who's working at it, enjoying it. Now other people want to do it, and they bring their light as well. That's what we call a virtuous cycle. So what we're looking for is how can you start that virtuous cycle in your life?